Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. In today's program, we will talk about the first woman Renaissance humanist in Italy. We will tell about her life, her career as a humanist writer, and her struggle for a female acceptance in society. Despite being somewhat of a stranger and forgotten over the years, it can have a very interesting story.
Born in Verona in 1418, daughter of Bianca Borromeo, a widow and illiterate. Isotta Nogarola had 10 siblings. 7 of one survived into adulthood and came from a noble family who cherished a common interest and maintained a strong tradition of education. Their daughters having produced literate women over several generations. Isotta learned Latin and Greek at a very early age by Martino Rizzoni, a pupil of Guarino Veronese, who was one of the most respected of Italian poets and humans of his time.
My academic career started very well. In 1434, I began to write literary letters and thanks to my studies in Latin and Greek. I was exalted by great princes and humanists. At the age of 18 I was already famous. I also began to write a book called Complete Writings. Later book, Dialogue on Adam and Eve. Despite being despised and humiliated for being a woman in this oppressive macho society, I will write this book to change its absurdity. While writing my book, I have been writing my literary letters. Until in 1437, I made friends with Guarino Veronenses and began to exchange letters. Guarino, I feel very bad. It seems that no matter what I do, people judge me and they speak badly. I feel totally despised.
Hey, man, Wasta! Go wash the dishes!
Look, Isotta, I think that you, in thousand words, it would be better for you to give you up and marry some man. Or maybe try to cultivate your masculine soul and assuming yourself as a man. Probably she's not rich, and using in a woman that you have unleashed the envy that gave rise to the most cruel and world episode of his career. In the middle, 1429, an anonymous satire signed with a classic pseudonym, Plinius Veronesis, whose meaning was forgotten in the past. Circulated in Verona and Venice attacked the morality of literature women. In the pamphlet, its author accused Isotta of promiscuity and incest with her brother Ludovico. Having stated that an eloquent woman is never cast. The accusations of adultery with serious were not in the service, but a single allegation of incest would shortly having the sophisticated divinations. So 5 years after the end of to write her letters, at the age of 23, Isotta renounced secular womanism to devote herself to the study of sacred writings. Refusing to many and committing herself in a perpetual virginity, this 15th century woman was forced to live in seclusion by a society hostile to female gravity. However, she would continue to preach until his death.
It was when Nicola Barbo, one Nogarola's correspondent, he wrote a letter defending her.
Caesar to wondering at all these things when that sacred unmarried sister, who was once such praise for her eloquence, those things which little befit her erudition and reputation. Although the theory of many wise men mean, I hold to be true, that an eloquent woman is never cast, and the behavior of many learned women of conformist birth. But lest you approve even slightly, 'tis excessively for an obscene crime, Let me explain that before she made her body generally available for promiscuous intercourse. She had first permitted, and indeed even earnestly desired, that the seal of her virginity should be broken by none other than her brother, Sultan by Shamai, be more tightly bound to him. Alas for God in whom men trust, while does not mingle even with earth nor the sea with heaven, when she, while sets herself to no limit in his filthy lust, that is to engage so deeply in the finest literary studies.
In defense of Isotta, the voice of other humanists such as from Philo Sasso, Zavarini Nella Panthea, Antonio Lazazzini, and the friend of Laura Brenzona, Antonio Panthea, were also raised. Likewise, two female humanists, Clara Zanvager and Constanza Varano, wrote supporting its crazy protest accent.
There are few family authors who know it, other before the dawn of the modern age, and this is fundamental due of three reasons. First, they hardly received the education they need to write. Second, women did not have access of public functions, whether as administrations, lawyers, or notaries, bureaucrats of universal professors, which could provide them with knowledge about the type of subjects the literary public likes to write. Finally, culture imposes silence on a woman, considering impotent speech a form of lack of chastity grounded in the ancient and tradition, which from classical Greece, thought Roman, and ecclesiastic Christianity support the Aristotelian theory that woman should adorn herself with silence.
In the face of this limitation, it is extraordinary that someone has even dared to write. And those who did before the 14th century were almost always non-religious, whose isolation made their statements more acceptable. But of the countless educated women known in Italy 15th century, whether they were nobles, courtesans, or poetesses, there were few who tried to write anything but verse. Isotta Nogarola, considered the first truly cultured woman of the Renaissance, is among the major number of women who dared to think in public, thus breaking the tradition of the silent woman. It was thanks to his innumerable letters that attest to his literary career, allowing us to get a glimpse of his life and his growing fame among the humanist circles of Verona and Venice. Also, his book is the only that still has record scaled currently of complete writings. Later book Dialogue of Adam and Eve, over the years, made in changing the title, having started with the first title Diálogos, quo ultrum adum viva magis precaverit, quaestio satis nota sed non adeo explicata, continuator, probably the different interpretations of his book. And Isotta never stopped writing himself after renouncing humanism.
Isotta's book uses a topic of conventional debate, which of the two, Adam or Eve has greater responsibility in its expulsion from the paradise. To assert that women are equal to men, the debate that supports this work refers to the myth of Adam and Eve, or the myth of original sin. Viewed as a model of legitimation of male domination, thus, in the dialogue of Adam and Eve, Isotta Nogarola will debate Eve's query, exposing The hypocrisy of those who wished to label woman as an irrational and imperfect being, but simultaneously capable of leading Adam to original sin. The dialogue of Adam and Eve is regarded as one of the most important works written by a woman in the early modern era, where the author directly confronts the paradoxes of the feminine condition at the time in which she lived in an original and daring way.
Not just 100 years after it was written, Isotta's masterpiece was finally published in 1563. His nephew grandson, Count Francisco Nogarola, ordered the printing in Venice of the book includes the only Isotta poem for was existence to snow. Which is composed of 92 verses. I am back.
In 1441, Isotta repents and decides to return to live with her mother, and among the traditional opinions that were present then to the woman of his class what that would be the marriage or the convent. Isotta did not choose any of them, choosing to live away from lifehood, but in her own space, in a kind of religious retail, confined to what Margaret Payne, her biographer, called the book-lined cell, something like a self-constructed prison cell, full of books and devoted to the study of the sacred scriptures and other religious works. Hurt by the fact of feeling a stranger in the male human society, where a woman would have to become a man to succeed her celibacy and virginity were celebrated and her Christian piety was prized as wiser and more religious.
Between 1441 and 1443, Isotta lived with her mother in the house of her brother, Antonio. In 1451, meets Lodovico Foscarini, a Venetian diplomat who had come to Verona as governor. Then begins a friendship that would last until the death of Nogarola. It was Foscarini who assumed the role of interlocutor in the main work of the Isotta. De pari alto, impare evai ataque ad peccato.
From 1453, due to a dispute between her brother about the division of the Fraternity, Isotta and her mother moved to the house of her brother Ludovico, where Isotta remained until her mother's death in 1461. After the death of mother, in 1461, Isotta joined the house of Foscarini.
Isotta lived with Ludovico until his death in 1466, at the age of 48. Under the protection of a head of the family, how would promote his reputation for holiness and spirituality. So, she was buried in the grave of Santa Cecilia in Verona. Some may think very dark stories is that Isotta did not finish her masterpiece. She was been writing her work through the years, thus having her 10th chapter written in 1461.
Isotta was very supportive of her family, especially her mother Bianca. One in her will provide for Isotta to remain comfortably after her death, leaving her a considerable number of possessions. His share of this maternal heritage was almost equal to that of his brother Ludovico, and so Isotta lives being almost forgotten in the past, having nowadays information extremely difficult to find and having no homage name. But today we let you know the incredible woman that she was.
Some days don't